Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new episode of Micadelic. I am your host, Mike Brancatelli. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining. Thanks for coming. If you're new, thanks for checking us out. And thank you to all you listeners out there that support the show by liking it and sharing it and talking about it. And if you really enjoy the show and you want to support us, really simple. All you got to do is just go to iTunes, leave us a nice rating and review. Simple as that. I won't twist your arm about it, even though I talk about it every single podcast, and you're probably sick of it already. But hey, that's what we got to do around here. So yeah, if you like the show, if you're a fan, if you get value from it, just support us by leaving a nice rating and review on iTunes. That should just about do it for now. Anyway, today's podcast is an awesome one. I had a really great conversation with the founder of Collective Evolution, Joe Martino. And if you don't know what Collective Evolution is, I mean, I don't know how you can't. They're everywhere. They're all over the place. They're biggest. They're on social media. They're on Facebook. They're on everything. Their biggest source is probably Facebook. That's how I found out about them. They have like 4 million likes on their Facebook page, and they're constantly putting out tremendous content every day for a conscious new earth, as they say. And basically what Collective Evolution is they're an organization that's engaging people to begin thinking about what it all means to be a human being on this planet, kind of like what I'm doing with this podcast. It's exploring what makes us human and just trying to communicate important truths and be a new source, a new media outlet for people to engage in conscious content that helps expand our everyday way of thinking. They do a lot of they create documentary films. They hold events. They're located in Toronto. Collective Evolution is one of these new media organizations that is putting out powerful and impactful content and inspiring content to help really bring about kind of the change that we all want to see in this world. So I think they're doing some amazing things, and I won't go too much more into it because we're going to talk about all this stuff on the show. Once again, Joe Martino, and we just had a great conversation. And and he's going to tell you all about how he started Collective Evolution and what they're currently doing and how the future is going to shape out and all that kind of stuff and what they're looking forward to. So, yep, very good conversation and really, really excited about this one. I hope you guys are going to like it as well. And if you do like it, please, share it with your friends, talk about it. The best way that we can help grow this podcast and spread this message is by word of mouth. If you're listening to this show and you feel that you really get value from it and you enjoy it, the best thing that you could do for me and for the show is just share it, talk about it, like it, those sorts of things, and then we can keep this train rolling along. All right, without further ado, I'm just going to get into it right now. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation with Joe Martino, the founder of Collective Evolution. Thanks.
Psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally laid down models of behavior and information cross-testing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you know is wrong.
We don't need new laws that control our consciousness and rigidly place it in a prison.
Cognitive liberty. The fact that as adults, if we're not hurting anybody else, we should have the right to explore the contours of our own
Thanks for coming on, Micadelic. Appreciate it very much. I'm a huge fan of your work. I'm absolutely just like a huge fan of Collective Evolution, and I'll tell you, I don't know too much, but I hope to know more, and that's the reason why you're here today, so I can know a little bit more, and so our listeners can know a little bit more about you guys. What I know is that I saw you on Facebook, and I started to see these really cool stories and inspiring quotes and just a lot of stuff that really connected with me and resonated with me, and I was like, oh wow, this is hitting almost every facet of our society and culture. And I'm like, looking at like a little checklist, like, yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. The political stance, I agree with that. I agree with this. So it was really cool to see that. And then, obviously I get the notifications and all that stuff. So how did this whole thing begin? How did Collective Evolution start?
That's a good question, because now almost 8 years ago, it's like people ask you, how was it? How is it now versus when it started? What's that like? Has it changed? How has it evolved over the years? How does it feel to like kind of have gone through that journey? And so there's been like a lot of reflection. And for me, back 8 years ago when I was first starting it, there was a time in my life where I was feeling very sort of just down and out, as funny as that sounds. But I mean, in terms of creating what we created now, out of a space of being, down and out. But it was like I was in college. I was doing what I guess, my friends and family and, people around you are all telling you got to do, which is, you've completed high school and now you got to go to college, even though you have no idea what you want to do. And, you don't really feel like it's for you, and the education system has just never really resonated with you, but, you got to do it because that's what life's about. And that's how you get places in life. So here I am, I'm in college, and I'm just totally not feeling fulfilled in my life. Again, it was like one of those spots where in life where you kind of feel like you hit your low point in a sense, which I think is a very good thing to have happen, because a lot of greatness can come out of that, and it's usually a very good reflection point. But so here I am, I'm experiencing this, and I finally, long story short, I decided to drop out of college for good. And I had gone through at this point about 4 different diplomas that I was trying to complete, thinking that every time I switched one, I would feel better about it, or that I would somehow resonate more with it. So here I am, I drop out of school, and I start exploring a lot about, myself, how my beliefs were formed, how I was starting to learn about consciousness, what that was all about. Why do I see the world and perceive the world the way I do? Has everything I've learned in life, is it really all true? What does it really all mean? And so through that whole journey, there was a lot of exploration, a lot of internal change, and decided, hey, you know what? I bet there's other people going through this same stuff. And there was small conversations you'd have here and there where people would really open up to you about this stuff, and you started to realize it would be great if there was an online resource that would allow people to come and just read stories. And for me at the time, it was very sort of therapeutic to put a lot of my thoughts and my journey online. So I just started writing, and that's how Collective Evolution got its first content, as I was writing every day, usually like 1, 2, sometimes 3 times a day, just posting up articles and stuff like that. And over time, it expanded into an organization that, has a very, very clear message at its core, which is change starts within, meaning all the change we want to create in the external world, we first have to begin by changing ourselves. We got to focus on who we are and how we perceive the world first, and make a shift there, and that'll express outwards. And so we've gone into, documentaries, articles, videos. We have a retreat center up north. We do, events in Toronto. We got a whole bunch of stuff on the go, all geared towards, again, sharing that message of change starts within. And that's how we're going to create a positive shift on this planet to make the world a better place.
Yeah. Wow. Like, to say that I can resonate with that is an understatement. I mean, you basically just describe almost my life story, except I didn't have the balls to drop out of college because I was too afraid. Everyone kept telling me I would be a bum or something. But yeah, I hated it. I always hated school. I mean, same stuff. I totally agree with you. And it's It's a great message, you know. I mean, there's so many times, there's so much out there in the world right now where people are focused on all this external stuff and worried and just running around like a bunch of lunatics, when really a lot of the change does come from within. So that's a powerful message, and you know, you guys put out really great content. So it was just you, Joe. You started this on your own, and then eventually some people decided they wanted to be a part of it, or did you kind of go out there and start to hire people, or how did it really kind of grow into what it is now?
Yeah, so I mean, at the time when we were starting, I was running another website with a friend, and it was more so geared towards the conspiracy side of things, and we wanted to foster conversation. So we had like a forum going that was all about the different things that we were kind of learning and seeing, and you know, building a bunch of discussions there. And, you know, as that kept going, it was like, you know, you saw the value in having like a community online where you could talk to people. And when I started to really go through a lot of the consciousness-based shifts, I felt that, you know, the message of what we were doing in the other one was just not quite there. And so I really wanted to put a lot of what I was learning on the consciousness side and create a whole new energetic pattern, which is collective evolution, you know, like this whole new platform that would have a completely different feel, would have a very clear mission, and, you know, how could we create that? And so basically what happened was, you know, it became my baby pretty fast. You know, it was something I resonated really hard with. It was something that I felt very strongly about. And I had there was a couple of people around that were, you know, trying to sort of find their place within it, to try and, you know, see how they resonated and what they wanted to do at the time. And it was kind of like a tough early beginning, because it you know, it kind of required help from more people and stuff like that. But it was one of those things where, you know, people got to feel like they're really involved in a way that they're expressing who they are through it and that sort of thing. So over time, a couple of the people that were kind of helping out at the beginning had just kind of phased off in the next couple of months. And then I had met a couple of friends that were like, kind of like they were on this journey too, almost at the exact same point in my life, where they were just kind of like leaving school, or they were, you know, really unfulfilled with life and that sort of thing. And so they started writing for the site. And so it was very much just like doing a lot of writing and focusing a little bit on Facebook. And I think we had like kind of 3, 4 of us, 5 of us going strong, but like not like super full time at this point. And after about, I would say, because we went hard for about 3.5, 4 years before we even thought of monetizing, because it was strictly just a passion project. It was something that we just loved doing, and we kind of just made things work, you know. And then eventually we got to the point where we chose to monetize around, I think it was around 2012, the end of 2012, or somewhere around the end of 2012. And it changed everything. It like absolutely changed everything, because, you know, we had made commitments to ourselves when we were monetizing, you know, that any form of monetization and how we went about it had to resonate with us and have to feel like it was in line with our message. And while I can't say we're 100% there, because, you know, there are still ads that show up on our site that, you know, aren't 100% in line with our message. Like if it shows Coca-Cola, or if it shows like, you know, something like that, you know, that's not 100% where we want to be. But for the most part, our advertising, we've been very, very strict with it. And that's how we've stayed so solid and strong to our message. But yeah, then we started expanding once we monetized, and now we have about, including freelance staff, we have about 14 people working for the company, and you know, we're looking to expand in the next a few months to a year, somewhere in that range, as we kind of just, you know, take things to the next level. Because at this point for us, you know, we've kind of been operating from, we started with nothing to, you know, just a little bit of, I threw in $1,000 at the beginning of this thing to like just kind of really just get everything rolling. And, you know, now it's at the point where it's like we've been kind of just doing it this way for so long. We've built ourselves up to a point that we feel very happy about, very grateful for all the stuff that's come into place over the years. But we really want to push into the main space more and create consciousness as a pop culture conversation, something that is talked about so much that there's no way to ignore it. And that's kind of the goal here is really just push it out there as much as we can. So we're kind of making that push this year, and that's what we're going for.
Awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's it is definitely it definitely takes some courage, and it definitely takes determination, and just really, you said it was a passion project, and I mean, I can relate to that as well. And it's like, in the current state of the world, there is this shift that is happening, and it's not going to be easy, and it's not the old guard isn't just going to kind of roll over. But that's awesome that you guys stuck with it, and that you're growing it, and that you're taking it to the next level, because this is something that I think is much needed in the mainstream cultural consciousness that we all that we see. I mean, the regular stuff that we've been exposed to for so long hasn't really served us too well, right? As you can attest to. So hopefully maybe we can serve our peers and the people coming up a little bit better when by expanding this network or this this movement. Really is what it is. I feel it's definitely a movement. And yeah, you said 14 people. I mean, you guys seem so much bigger than that. You seem to have such a bigger presence than that. But I want to actually get to something you said. You said you're talking about a consciousness shift in yourself, or you were exploring consciousness, and what led you to kind of start doing this. What was it? Anything in particular? Did you that kind of led to this, that sparked this, or that was a catalyst for the consciousness shift? Whether it was meditation or psychedelics or anything in particular, or maybe a combination of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely talk to that. And, just to touch on what you had mentioned prior about sort of the appearance of the brand and seeming like such a big sort of company. It's what's funny is we hear all the time, every time, we're talking about the content, and I talk to people and they're like, oh, what's your team size? And I always like, how do you produce that much stuff with the team? And I'm just like, I don't know, because we always feel like we don't do enough, but it's like to other people, it's like, I guess it comes across so grand and so big. But it's just a group of people just like gunning for it every day, just really pushing and doing a lot. And I feel like once we get things going from the standpoint of having the resources that we truly need to achieve the things that we want, I think it's going to be such a beautiful expression. So I'm really excited for that. But going to the whole aspect of how did I get here in terms of the consciousness side and resonating with that, it was something where, I mean, it kind of goes back to my childhood. Growing up, I always had a flair for the paranormal, and always knew there was a lot more to our reality than what we see in the physical. And so through that, I kind of always had this open mind to feeling, to intuition, to understanding how the world really worked. I had a fascination with space and astronomy, and knowing there was something more out there. And while it never led to a strong spiritual sort of connotation until a little bit later in life, I grew up Catholic, so I grew up under the sort of the confines of, God is out there, and you're here, and you've kind of you're constantly doing things that are wrong, and
he's watching you the whole time, right?
Absolutely, he's watching you. And I used to get threatened with like, God sees everything you're doing and this, that, whatever. And it's for some people it works, and it's their way of doing things, and that, sure, have fun with it. But for me, it was always something that I knew and I had asked so many questions about. I grew up in Catholic schools, so you'd ask the questions in religion classes like, what about this or what about that, and they just never had answers. And to me, that was kind of like, the clarity of religion really comes when you start to ask the question, if God is, or if Jesus, or however you want to look at it, is unconditionally loving, and created us and wants us to thrive and all these sorts of things, then why is there so much judgment and hate and all this? Like, what? It doesn't make any sense. Why, if he loves you unconditionally, you could ask a mother or a father, your child, is there anything that your child could do that you would suddenly want to put them in a fiery pit for the rest of their lives, for all of eternity? And every mother and father is like, no, I would never do that. And it's like, okay, so then why do you think some unconditionally loving being who created you would want to do the same thing? It kind of doesn't add up, right?
Right.
Just from an experiential point of view, right? And this is where I think consciousness and spirituality is more about it from an experiential side, as opposed to just having faith in something. I think they produce two very different results. And I really encourage the experiential side a lot. And that can happen through a number of things. Like for me, I was on this path of really starting to, again, so aside from all the paranormal experiences and dreams and stuff that I had as a kid, where I had, gone through some really, really, really interesting stuff, some deep stuff that, we could get into, but I'll kind of just answer the question outright, maybe dive into that stuff after. But going through some of that I just kind of felt always opened and primed for, something deeper. And so I had met, back in 2008, I met a man who was kind of just like, I had a ton of questions and he was just answering a ton of those questions. And it was all things that I was finding in my journey at that time. And that was kind of like, as simple as that sounds, that was kind of the kicker that got me on to like, oh my God, everything that I've been seeing, feeling, and exploring over this past year is now being confirmed to me as true in a way that feels very resonant within myself. Do you know what I mean? Like it was a profound feeling.
Yeah, right.
And
a confirmation.
I just recall, yeah, absolutely. And I just recall he had done this meditation with me where basically, we went back into a memory, not like under hypnosis or anything like that. It was more so just like close your eyes, whatever. We go back into a memory. And I remember just seeing it so vividly. I remember my third eye just like literally flickering with so much bright light, like it was insane. And throughout this whole process, of course, my body, because I was experiencing a lot of anxiety at the time, because I was very anxious about how my life was going because I was in college and I couldn't handle it. And anxiety is always a great tool to kind of get you to stop and like say, hey, what's going on? Something's out of alignment here, So as my third eye's flickering, my whole body's starting to like energetically like vibrate, and I'm like, okay, I'm starting to freak out a little bit. Like I didn't really show it, but inside, like my mind was like, you got to get out of this. There's something, like you can't do this. This is gonna break down. This is gonna break down. And that's what I kept feeling. But really, what was going on there is old programs and thoughts and the ego were starting to get challenged, right? And so it was a very interesting experience that led to a whole bunch of exploration into consciousness. Again, going into like who are we really? Who am I? Like, where do I really come from? And like, what is the I that's observing this experience versus the I that thinks it is the experience, and so on and so forth, right? And so through that whole journey, it was all about just meditation and just reflection and being in nature. I spent so much time in nature during this time, just sitting by the lake here in Toronto, and just looking and watching and just connecting, in a very just energetic way to earth and whatever. And it sounds like this hippie-ish journey, but it really wasn't. It was literally just like heading out there, sitting on the grass and just looking at the water and just kind of like contemplating and thinking and reflecting. And I developed a very, very strong relationship with my higher self and really getting into, sort of asking the questions. What, like, if you could say to somebody, if you could ask your soul all the questions, all the answers you wanted, would you want to do that? And I think most people would say, absolutely. That's something that I would want to do, even for people who aren't sure that there might be if there's a soul or not, they would want to at least explore that experience. And I had that experience, and I got to do that for a long time, and I still do all the time now. And everybody's totally 100% capable of that. I just had it at a time where it was so strong that I could so clearly see what it is that I needed to do and wanted to do. And so through that whole journey, it was a lot of, again, just internal reflection, a lot of meditation, a lot of just writing and doing what I did. I never was drawn to or guided to exploring with psychedelics, although a lot of people I know do, and it's a great tool or a door opener for a lot of people to explore consciousness, to explore self, to explore all those things.
It sounds like you didn't really need to. It sounds like you produced them naturally, because that's that's about the experience, opening your third eye, your chakras, and experiencing that light and that energy and that knowing. Yeah, that's pretty psychedelic, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the, I was very interested in psychedelics at the time. Well, I mean, I'm still am now in terms of just, what they can provide. And I doing a lot of research. And again, I grew up like, I didn't drink. I didn't smoke weed. I did not, like, I just was never drawn to anything. I liked being who I was in those moments. And it's not to say that people who do those things want to be someone different. It's more so that I just really enjoyed the state that I was in, regardless of what I was experiencing in life. And so when I would drink, which was there was like an 8-month period in my life where I explored alcohol, and I got drunk one time, and I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. Why would we do this? So it was like one of those things. But
I think Bill Hicks, great comedian, Bill Hicks says, but the alcohol is the only substance that they allow because it kind of keeps you like dumb enough. You still go to work and you can relax on the weekend or something like that. I forgot, I messed up the quote, but it was something like that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like, I think he says like you drink coffee throughout the day to like keep your energy and everything going, and then you drink alcohol on the weekend or something to like make yourself feel better or something like that.
Right.
Like,
yeah. It's just like a cycle of that. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, the whole psychedelic thing I got interested in. I started doing a lot of research, a lot of writing on, and really putting it out there as a resource for people. It's like, look, I've never done this. I'll be forth and outright with it, but I feel like from a consciousness perspective that this could be a great exploratory tool, so long as it, like many other things, whether it be food, whether it be alcohol, whether it be marijuana, whatever it is, as long as it doesn't become this crutch where you don't feel like you can have a relationship with your higher self or your consciousness without it, right? That is the number one thing with anything that we try and do, psychedelics or not. It all comes down to building that daily you have your connection to yourself daily, and you recognize that as something that is part of your experience here, as opposed to something that you only do from time to time when you want to explore it. Because what we're moving towards, and what's happening, and what this whole shift is about, is getting into alignment where you're allowing your consciousness, your true self, to come through on a daily basis in your experience, so that you're expressing what you truly want to express, as opposed to expressing what your mind or your programming is looking for you to express. And this is what leads to so much lack of fulfillment in the world, is because almost all of us, and that's changing as we go. So I mean, this is probably a more accurate statement if I said it about 8 years ago, but we're seeing more and more people getting in alignment now. But most of us are not living through our true self, and not doing stuff that we're really passionate about and that we feel we want to express. And so what happens is we go about life thinking that we're just this mind doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're living through the programming of what our parents told us, our friends told us, what society has told us, what different aspects of culture has told us. And we take that on as an identity, and we live our lives and project it through that. And all of a sudden we start to feel unfulfilled. And then we ask the question, why? And it's like, well, you're not doing what you came here to do, what your soul is here to do. And as we get lost in the idea that that's like, oh my God, that's so profound, I'm here to do something crazy. And it's like, no, you came here with a checklist, if you will, of things that you wanted to experience in this lifetime. It's that simple. And when you get totally locked up in the mind aspect of living life, you start to get into this realm of, I'm just kind of like, I'm chasing that, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. And if you ask people, why do you feel like you even want to do that? And they're not sure. Or, they're living out someone else's dream. They're living out the American dream, or they're living out the celebrity's dream, or they hear someone and they say, oh, well, that sounds really cool, I would like to do that. But is it even your dream? Is it something that you really want to do? And so I believe a lot of the lack of fulfillment on this planet is as a result of us not being in alignment and in touch with our true selves and what we're trying to do and what we want to express and what we're here to express. And that lack of alignment and the feeling that comes from within that doesn't feel so good is actually the catalyst that pushes us to go on the search for what is it that I want to do? How do I want to express? But what people need at this time, and this is what I think is so important, is the permission to see, yeah, it's okay to do that. It's okay to explore that. It's okay to, go down a path of doing something that's totally unconventional, or doing something that's outside the realm of your comfort zone or what your parents are telling you and all that sort of stuff, right? That's, going beyond those initial fears is what really starts to open that door of expressing and being who you truly want to be and who you came here to be, in that sense. And, like what you're doing right now with your podcast, I mean, obviously it's something you're passionate about and something that you want to do. A lot of people just they think about it, but they don't really ever just do it. And it's like, well, what if that's something that's really going to provide you fulfillment? Because in some way, shape, or form, you need to express this to people, no matter how many people listen to it, no matter how many people are whatever. People always say, oh, how can I build what you guys built? It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Just do what you feel inspired to do. And that's all that matters. Because that's all we ever did, was just do what is in alignment with what your soul is. You don't even have to think about, worry about anything beyond that. Just do, and everything will just kind of open its doors. And of course, you bring in the mind, you bring in the physical world aspect of it, and play the game a little bit so that you can express it in this world. But get in alignment with self, get in alignment with your soul, because that's a huge part of it.
Wow, that's some serious deep truth bombs right there, man. That was yeah. I love what one of my favorite authors, thinkers, philosophers of all time is Joseph Campbell, and he says, "Follow your bliss." Just follow your bliss, and doors will open where there were only walls before. It's like, and it sounds like to me, from your life experience, you had these kind of synchronistic events that happened, and because you were really following what you knew was right, you experienced something, you said this isn't right, and you decided to make the shift and say, I'm going to listen to myself, I'm going to listen to my inner gut feeling, and I'm going to go towards that. And then when you started to move in that direction, things started to come into your life, things started to arise, things started to kind of connect and coalesce for you. Did you have a good support group of friends and family who were supportive of this kind of awakening and building and transitioning and elevating to a higher consciousness?
Yeah, I would say to I don't want to say it was oh my God, the easy world, but it definitely was supported by several people that I think made the journey a lot easier. And through that recognition, I totally can understand and relate to the challenge that people can have when they don't have that support mechanism, because there's been times in my life where I've had it really strong, and then there's been 3 years in my life where I didn't pretty much have it. And it's a pretty big difference. But if you gain the strength, in the times where you do have the support, it's a lot easier in those years when you don't have it, or in those times when you don't have it. Because at the end of the day, too, it's you don't bring on any experience unless you're able to your soul's not going to put up more than it can do. So, right. So, it's all about sort of getting the mind out of the way and saying,
Thanks. Sorry, Joe. 1 second. We're just experiencing a little bit of technical difficulty right there. You were chopping up a little bit. It might have cleared up now. Sorry. Continue.
So now we can look at other countries, other people, other things, and now we're not having this hatred, this judgment towards a culture, towards a thing, or whatever it might be, which ultimately leads to more peace, right? Because what happens is the more you start to shift that aspect of it, the more you remove the need for another soul or another group of souls to express that opposite to you, because you've gone past that lesson, right? Everybody's playing a role for one another. Right. So when we talk about all this war and this fighting and conflict, is just a reflection of our state of consciousness. And we look for the physical solutions to it all, but a big part of it is just continuing to have the conscious solutions to it. How can we change ourselves to approach the situation in a different way? How can we foster new forms of communication that are based around a genuine empathy or understanding for where people are at, and then how we can, express to them in a more non-judgmental way, which is the most important thing, right? So again, these macro changes within ourselves in our own lives is ultimately what will create that external world. And having a support mechanism of people around is definitely important, because it can help to sort of bounce ideas off other people, talk to other people about things. I mean, I was going through a lot of this stuff with about 4 or 5 other people who, I could at least talk to about it. And, there was one mentor in particular that was very, very powerful in my journey and, helped accelerate things a lot. But at the same time, if you don't necessarily have that, ask for it and start seeking it out, look for a community, try and create a community, because it's truly meaningful to have that. And, that's why for us, I mean, we're creating an online community right now. It's like a members area to basically be able to start fostering this deeper community relationship between people so that we can all kind of explore and evolve together, because, that's a huge part of it. Right. And, it's invaluable. I guess I'll leave it off on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like I'm a part of this kind of community as well, just being a follower of your page and your website and what you guys produce. It's like, it's kind of like my tribe, my people, and the people that listen to this podcast, they feel that way too. I get a lot of messages from people saying like, oh, like I love that what you said and it really resonated with me, and I've always felt that way, but I never really thought about it. Or people say like, I don't have anybody in my like town that like thinks like this or talks like this. So it's pretty cool that we're able to kind of actually, for the first time in history, I think, have a global shift in consciousness by this technologically mediated evolution. It's like we're all able to connect with each other and share our thoughts and ideas and our experiences and how we see the world. And I think I think there's a journey ahead, but it's one that's worth going on, because I think what you're doing with Collective Evolution and a number of other people there, and myself included, I guess. And it's like we have the opportunity to kind of. You brought this up a couple times, and it really resonated with me because when I grew up, it's kind of like when you grow up, when you come into the world, people just tell you this is the way it is. It's just like you just do this, do that, whatever, and you're kind of like in this weird game where you're like, I don't really like these rules, and I don't really like what is this? I don't understand. So I think we have an opportunity now to actually like change the game and kind of share what is right, help get people into alignment in our generation. And I think you guys are doing a tremendous job of that. And you were talking about how your team is not quite as big, but I think I was figuring it out. Like everything that you guys put out is so impactful. There's no waste. I never see a Collective Evolution article or post where I'm like, it's really not to be over flattering or whatever, but seriously, sometimes there's a lot of noise there's too much noise and there's too much stuff that gets lost in it. And I think you guys do a good job of sticking to what you believe in, sticking to what you feel aligned with, and then putting that out there. Yeah. So anyway, but you're right. Here I am just being a fanboy, but in all seriousness, I just think that this is, so I want to talk a little bit about like this kind of global awakening consciousness shift thing. I definitely have felt this, and I definitely believe this. What are your thoughts on this? Talk to me a little bit about this kind of global shift of awakening and consciousness.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the whole change starts within part of it is I mean, in essence, it's synonymous with the global shift in consciousness that's happening. It's just, I believe that's the vehicle to which it has the most impact is by changing the individual within. And it's part of, what has to be our focus in a sense, as much as when we talk about the global shift or global change in consciousness that's happening, we think that it's sort of happening automatically in the background and, we're just going through it. But a lot of it does come down to our choices and our free will as well. So essentially what I started to come on to over the past, 8.5 to 9 years was the understanding that there was, and it was interesting, going back to childhood, I had always felt, and I always asked the question to my parents, I would say, the world, like none of it makes sense. Like it's just crazy. Like I would watch them watch the news and I'd be like, what the hell are we looking at here? Like this is like I'm watching these people in suits talk about these problems as if they're difficult to solve. And I'm like, but didn't we create everything here? Like, didn't we create the economy? Didn't we create trade? Didn't we create, food scarcity? Like, we did this ourselves, and therefore we can uncreate it and create something new. It's like we're acting as though resources are finite in a sense. I mean, there's certain resources that are finite, but in terms of the resources we truly need to make our world function, there's nothing short of abundance. I mean, a lot of that comes with technology, comes with, kind of shifting our perspective on things. But I mean, all of our energy problems are completely solved and we don't need to use wind and solar. All of our water problems are solved and we don't need to worry about these things that people always throw all this fear around. It's done. It's just being held back. And so my thing is it's like, we have all these challenges, but we act like we can't change them. And, asking that question so much as a kid, and the answer that I always got was, that's just not how the world works. And I said, well, that's
right.
Bullshit. Because, there won't be a world if we keep going on this path. And, if this world is driven by greed, power, and money to some extent, which is just a form of consciousness, if it's driven by that, then it's going to destroy itself. Like you can't enjoy the greed, the power, or the money if you don't have any planet or incarnation to basically be able to say, yeah, I'm enjoying it, right? So that in itself is like this weird destructive sort of loop that we're in. But I also looked at it and I noticed there was a difference when you look at regular people. When you look at the average person that is
I know what you mean.
Walking around, versus the elite. When I say elite, I mean the seemingly not the wealthy. It's the seemingly very controlling aspects. There's certain people in this world, and I felt this way when I was a kid. There were certain people where you just had this feeling like there's something there that's different. There's something that's turned off, or there's something that's not quite right. There's not an empathy for what others are going through, what others are experiencing. It's very contrived. It's very calculated. And it's odd. It's almost like their heart is turned off, which is ultimately what I had always felt. I'm like, there's no heart there. And when I started to learn that the cabal and the Illuminati and a lot of the rituals that they do are actually doing things like that. They're turning off the hearts of a lot of these leaders and things like that before they put them into power, because there's no way someone could just say, hey, yeah, go ahead, no problem. Let's start a war. Let's bomb this area of this country and approve it, and not feel at a deeper level that, you're killing innocent people. Do you know what I mean? People feel that. So how is it that they're able to make these decisions? And that's where I started to kind of, put two and two together there. And so, again, going back to the shift aspect of it. So, seeing all this unfold as I was a kid and really asking about these things, there was this knowing that something in my lifetime was going to be dramatically different, that I was not ever going to live in the world that my parents lived in, or that, you would naturally project as a naturally evolving world through, years of just regular like technological advancements and this, that, whatever. There was something dramatically different that was going to happen. And I always knew that. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it would look like. I didn't know it had anything to do with consciousness. I just had no idea. It was just, I can see this and I want to be part of it and I want to help foster it. And I knew that as a kid. But at the same time, I very much just wanted to be a professional baseball player. That's what I wanted to do when I was a kid, So it's not to say that like I also was like my mission was to change the world. I wanted to do that, but at the same time I had this other passion. And so coming into about 8 or 9 years ago, having had all that in my childhood, I was told very simply, and actually one of the early things that I had read that hit me, and I was like, oh, there it is. I was reading Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, and in there, and don't quote me exactly, but he says to some extent in the very early few pages that there was a mass shift in consciousness happening on the planet, and so not everybody would be ready for it. But essentially, humans are at this point where it's like evolve or die, and that's the choice. And basically, there's going to be a bunch of people who are going to read this book and not truly understand what it's meaning and what it's really saying, but that there are people who are going to totally resonate with it, and over time, more people will resonate with it. But that's essentially what's going on here. And I'm thinking like, holy crap! Like this book is deep. This book, like I totally resonate with it, and I understand the depths into which it's referring to. I can't believe Oprah's behind it. I mean, I'm nothing against Oprah, but I can't believe, because she's so mainstream, you would think, how is this gaining such mainstream attention if people, this is going to kind of go over their heads, right? Not to be judgmental of the mainstream, but just it doesn't seem like a book that people would truly grasp the concept of, given where we're at. And what we learned over time was a lot of people were really struggling with the concept, but it was a consciousness seed. It was something that popped into a lot of people's minds and into the collective consciousness that would allow us to really start to explore and understand and expand on this stuff. So it was fantastic, and it serves such a strong purpose in this world, I think. Like many other things have. Even 9/11 has served one of the most influential events to ever take place on the planet in terms of consciousness awakening, in terms of people starting to understand how our world really works. But so here we are, we're starting to understand this shift. There's a lot more materials and stuff coming out. And ultimately what it comes down to, in the simplest explanation of what it is the film that I made, the last one I made, called Collective Evolution 3, The Shift. The idea was that I knew inside myself, I had explored at this point, I had understood, I could see it, I could project it forward, I could understand there was a mass shift in consciousness happening on this planet. But how can someone explain this to people? How can we make it so that it's almost provable, And so what I did was I decided to explore science, ancient cultures, the current times of today, and from the science side, certain things going on in the cosmos. And how could we look at that and start to determine what's actually happening? And how could we prove that there was a shift in consciousness going on? Because when you looked at the external world, you were seeing protests, revolts, insurrections, you were seeing mass changes in society going on. And it's still happening, right? So why is it happening, and why is it happening so much? And why does it seem to be happening at a faster rate than it ever has had before? What's going on there? I know from a spiritual perspective, from everything that I had learned and I had gone through, and the different people and spiritual people that I had spoken to as well. When I say spiritual people, I mean everybody's spiritual, but I mean people who are really focused on that sort of thing, and who dive into it daily to that's their career, that's their job, that sort of thing. So when I was speaking with them, they were all on this understanding as well, and they kind of knew and can see what was coming. And so I was like, okay, so that's all covered. So scientifically, cosmologically, what's going on? And so I started to look at years and years and years of research of sun cycles and the impact of solar waves and different cosmological energies and how they affect human consciousness. And funny enough, there was actually quite a bit of data on this, and there was quite a bit of study, and there was thousands of years of sun cycle graphs that matched up with various events in history that illustrated the changes that had gone on in people as a result of various sun cycles. And so I was fascinated by this. I dove into this really deeply. I started to understand what was going on, and from a cosmological and scientific perspective. And I started to realize that essentially the best way to explain it is, in our incarnation here, whether you want to call it Earth, this solar system, the universe as a whole, however you want to look at it, specific to what we're going through, many aspects of us and our solar system are evolving, just like the universe has always evolved. But it's going through a process right now where it's almost like a quickening. I mean, if you look at the experience we're having on Earth, when you understand from a soul level perspective, it's just an experiment. It's like, hey, okay, let's create this. It's like we create a video game. It's like, yeah, let's create this. Let's go, let's play it. And, let's forget that we're actually the ones who created the game, and let's just, go and experience it and experience all that it has to offer so that we can get better overall at video games. And so we're going through this experience here on Earth, and we had set up, this idea that if we're lost in our experience, if the game gets too hard, there's almost like a cheat code that we can pop in to give ourselves, some certain level of immunity or certain level of superhuman strength or power, however you want to look at it from a video game perspective. But that's kind of what this whole 2012-ish, and now not exactly, what people were talking about, and I covered this in the film, but more so that it was a energetic event that was a beginning and an end, in a sense, of what we had been experiencing collectively, and what we're going through and what we've opened up to is a shift in overall consciousness that's driven by our choice on a soul level collectively to change the way we're living our experience here, as well as the support coming in from cosmological evolver, which is the sun, right, which gets its information from the central sun of our galaxy. And so it's like you're having this evolutionary time not just happen here on Earth, but in all of our solar system and beyond, where we're now upgrading our experience and we're moving beyond certain levels of consciousness that we've been experienced on this planet. And what that looks like from a very physical perspective is all of our ways of living are starting to change. People are no longer feeling fulfilled with the way that things are. There's going to be mass shifts in the way we appreciate our environment, animals, each other, all those sorts of things. We're going to want to live through our soul's purpose and our soul's desires, as opposed to living through the mind. We're no longer accepting this idea of just moving through life to work to survive. This is happening at a ever increasing rate. Yes, there have always been people who thought this way, but there's so many people now, and it is so aggressive as to how it's overcoming humanity, that it is marking a shift that's like a massive shift that's happening. And because of the force behind it, we're seeing changes happen so much faster. And it's almost like you could look at the world 1 year from today and look at it now, and we're already like, holy crap, there are so many things that are completely different. And the people you thought would never, so quote unquote, wake up or think this way are suddenly thinking this way. Like, I've seen tons of people over the years go through this. And if you look at pop culture, and if you look at, even the celebrity culture and entertainment and all these different things going on, consciousness is making its way heavily into it. We were just out in LA and we were talking about a series that we're doing, and it's going to be pitched to a couple of big studios that, are highly interested in this subject matter. How does that happen? How is it that, Hollywood and these places where it's supposed to be so, dense and controlling and all this sort of stuff, they're interested. So there's a shift going on in those people as well. And that kind of just shows that this whole consciousness thing, this whole shift, this whole change is making its way through all of humanity. And ultimately, again, like I said, from a very physical perspective, we're going to see a massive change in our world, but it's also going to be a massive change in just how we feel and how we process ourselves, our emotions, what we want to do, being more in alignment with self, not being so driven by, certain aspects of the mind and the ego, which is all programming based on what we've taken in from our world around us. But what if we could get into a true heart-centered space? And, again, that's driven by a number of different factors. I'm just trying to summarize everything. A number of different factors is driven by, but what people care about most is ultimately how it affects them on a day-to-day basis. And that's why I like to talk about the sort of the physical world perspective. How does it really look? How does it really feel? What is my life going to look like? What do I need to do? And ultimately what I need to do is just pay attention to how you're feeling about things, start making decisions based on, your true inclinations versus what you think or versus what you fear, and just really get into alignment with that. And you'll see your whole world. I've watched it happen in my own life, and I've watched it happen in many, 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 many people's lives, where it sort of seems scary, but it's actually the most beautiful thing ever. So it's just like, yeah, get in alignment with self. It's a huge portion of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. You said so many great things, and one of the things that stuck out to me when you started talking about the group of elites, these people who have been in control, who want to control, want to dominate, who want to murder and kill and rule over everybody with an iron fist. And we could throw everything in there, right? Like the media, the education system. All these kind of old world power structures are like clinging on to their last kind of dying. They're going out soon, and they're falling down. But it seems to me like you guys have a really good balance. Joe, you have a good balance, and Collective Evolution has a good balance of providing inspiring, spiritual, higher vibrational material and subject matters, and balancing it out with the things that are kind of really going on in this physical world, and I refer to those kind of like those elite people and the government people and the deep state people and all that kind of stuff, because it was from my experience, I got kind of sucked into that world, that Alex Jones InfoWars kind of, we're all going to die. They're going to put us in FEMA camps. And I think that sometimes people can get a little too sucked into that world. I mean, you turn on the television on, CNN and Fox, they're selling fear. And then on some of these alternative shows, they're selling fear in a little different way. I mean, it's a lot of what they're saying is truthful, with all this stuff happening. But it's from my experience that I notice a lot of people. I do another podcast called Part of the Problem. It's kind of a news and politics podcast with a libertarian kind of focus to it. And we tend to get really deep and heavy into a lot of kind of fear-based stuff, truthful stuff that's happening that we need to expose people to. But you guys, I think, do a good job of balancing this. A lot of times people that are talking about consciousness and spirituality, sometimes they can kind of drop out of the game and be in flowery, lovey land. And, that's great. I mean, that's cool. But it seems to me that you guys are able to kind of harness this spiritual consciousness energy and implement it into all of these real things that we need to deal with if we're going to make this change. You think that's an accurate description of what you guys are doing?
Absolutely, and I'm so glad it comes across that way. And I mean, that is a piece of feedback that we've received a number of times. And what's good about it is that it's exactly the goal and what we try and do, because like you mentioned with regards to the flowery and the lovey-dovey and all that sort of stuff, I mean, there's a certain level of that's just another ego representation to want to just be in that flowery, lovey-dovey place all the time, because what you're not doing is looking at, the way the world is. You're trying to fit into another box as opposed to seeing the world for what it really is. And there's a lot, I think, in the spiritual space that is not entirely complete or somewhat misleading, or it is, like I said, just some other constructs of ego in a sense. And again, still, it's part of the journey. It's part of the process, what people, are all expressing and what we're doing together. But I think the ultimate sort of understanding that we're kind of trying to come across is a true shift in what's happening on the planet, which means understanding what's actually happening on the planet and what's going on, and allowing us to see that, process that, and move through it. There's going to be, and there already is happening, massive traumas that humanity, there's no way to avoid it. And it's not a bad thing. Like this is the thing. It's like when people hear the word trauma and they're like, oh my God, I can't. It's like, no, trauma is bad when you don't know how to process it. But a trauma is really just an opportunity. It's a learning lesson and something to go through. But yeah, people are going to have to understand how our planet's been run for the past while, and who's been at the helm of it, and what they've been doing, and why they've been doing it. And, maybe not every nitty gritty detail, but they're going to have to understand. Do you know what I mean? It's not something we can't go through a shift in consciousness and understand our reality and know how to move through it and process it and move through all the different energetic portions of it, the emotional portion of it, and everything that's there, and the reason why we chose to go through it in the first place. We cannot create another world without understanding what had happened and what we had been through. So all these people trying to close their eyes to this quote unquote negative stuff that's happening, it's not negative. Like the fact that, a group of people got together and knowingly, with the help of the government and other forms of cabal, flew planes into two towers and killed people. That event in itself is not negative to talk about. It's negative if you were to say, for example, oh, these scumbag pieces of shit, blah, 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 went and did this and blah, blah. That's a whole different story. But what we do when we talk about it is here's what happened. Here's what went down. Here's what it means to us. Here's how we can process it. And here's how we can move forward, which is what it's all about. Because it's like people are okay with understanding that there's chemicals in their food that, they can then go and buy organic. But as soon as they start to think about the fact that, their governments may not have their best interest at heart for them, that's a problem that we can't look at. Why? Because it just affects them on a larger scale, and the mind is trying to avoid the understanding, because it means a mass change and a mass shift of perception in how we see and process our reality. And it means admitting that not that we were wrong, but that we were misled, and that so to our minds, we have something in there that's wrong. And a lot of times our ego, we don't want to be wrong. We don't want to feel like we don't actually understand, because there's a fear mechanism in place that grounds the ego in the reality that it believes to be true. And so that's why it's so important to have that deeper conscious understanding of, the energy of when your ego is thinking and feeling and expressing, versus when your soul is coming out, and when your soul is speaking through, and your true heart centered aspect of who you are. And a lot of this stuff as lovey-dovey or as airy-fairy as it sounds, is scientific. And this is the fascinating aspect of all of it. You could look into someone like the Institute of Heart Math, this is what they do. This is what they measure. This is what they have technology that measures, not only collective consciousness, but also that, they have personal devices that people wear that, helps them to measure their heart coherence. The heart has a measurable aura. Like this is not spiritual belief. It's scientific fact, and it's something that people don't expose themselves to, and it's not in public conversation, and so it seems as though it doesn't mean anything. But when you start to understand the very basics of our reality, it's like all this stuff makes complete sense and would shift the way we do a lot of things if we were exposed to this information. But I would say, to just go back to answering the question entirely, it's we need to look at this stuff. It needs to be presented in a specific way, in my opinion. And also, it's just what I feel to be true on a deeper level is, we need to be able to explore it from a way that's not emotional, from a way that's not judgmental, from a way that doesn't look at the elite or the cabal for something that, they're a pile of evil scum or anything like that. They are doing what, in essence, they are supposed to be doing right now for us and for everybody and for themselves. And when we can look at it from that manner and truly see it for what it is, choose to not accept it, which is what this is about. We're not accepting it. It doesn't resonate with us that it's still going on, right? So we're saying, okay, this is what's happened. Cool. We don't want to express this anymore. We don't want to play like this anymore. So what can we do to move forward? And how can we create that from a place that's not out of anger and judgment? Because when you create a world out of anger and judgment for the previous one, you're not creating from a pure place. You're creating from a place that is now, it resents the previous one. So you're now trying to create based on the previous one, as opposed to create based on what truly wants and needs to be expressed from a point of creativity. So it's very important to process that emotional side of it, but you can't process it unless you know it. So that's why we cover it. That's why we talk about it. There's pretty much no area that we won't go and talk about and cover. It has definitely challenged various relationships within this whole community of people wanting to sort of work together and stuff like that. Because some of them, they won't talk about vaccines, or they won't talk about UFOs and aliens, or they won't talk about, those sorts of things. But, that's the way they want to move about, and that's the way they want to go, and that's up to them. But, for us, that's how we feel it, and I think it's important to do it like that.
It's very important to do it like that. I agree 100%. Sometimes people can, they get too caught up into how they're being perceived or being judged or something like that. And I think that you guys are not in terms of, you're operating from the soul, from the heart place, and talking about everything no matter what, right? I mean, it's just like, hey, we're going to talk about it, and this is the way it is, and let's do something about it. So that's amazing. And you mentioned your movie there, Collective Evolution 3, The Shift. So you're creating all this content, and you guys are constantly putting out all this amazing content. What besides kind of reading and listening, and people are going to listen to this podcast and hear all these amazing things that you're saying, what's something that someone should do in their life, like on a daily basis, to kind of help be a part of this consciousness shift and help be a part of this movement to elevate to a higher consciousness and overthrow the cabal and and bring about the change that we all in our hearts really want to experience and want to see? What can someone really do and put into action?
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest things is really just starting to know yourself more. And that sounds like, oh, okay, well, that's easy. We'll maybe at the same time, that's hard. What does that even look like? Well, I always say like some simple things is even just like start journaling. Like go and talk about what you did that day, what you feel that day, how you feel. Like do check-ins. Like how am I feeling right now and why? And the more you start to pay attention to you and to yourself, the more you slow down your reality, the more you slow down what's happening, and the more you start to realize there's deeper aspects of yourself that are in the background, either not feeling as great as you might want or that sort of thing. And so creating that really good self-reflection, those times to go within and those times to explore yourself will certainly lead to you knowing how you want to express and what you want to do. Of course, at the same time, from a very, very practical point of view, so like beyond starting the journey of really just knowing yourself, it's, think about the world that you want to create inside, or the world that you want to see. Like, do you want to see certain aspects of pollution happening? Do you want to see, certain companies to not be around, or do you want to see them shift, or do you want to see other companies to be more popular, or however it might be, if you feel things are doing good things? And vote with your dollar for that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Share with other people what it is that, you believe in. Like if you decided to go organic because you felt like that was the right thing, then yeah, spend the money, go organic, do that, support it, and tell other people, and keep, educating from a place of peace. And don't educate from like, you guys are all fucked, you're eating this, blah, blah, blah. No, just educate from a place of peace, because that's what it's about anyway. Mm-hmm. And share and just make those choices in life. Make those choices of what you're going to buy, what you're going to do, what you're going to support, what you're not going to support, how you're going to, doing things like I always tell people, the stuff you surround yourself with to some extent also has a very big impact. What movies are you watching all the time? What documentaries are you watching? What books are you reading? What music do you listen to? Pull some of the stuff away that's, in a sense, poisoning the consciousness or re-upping the power that the ego has. Making those changes in life are huge. Cutting out the news. I cut out top 40 music for a little while and see how different you're going to feel, because you're going to feel really different. You know what I mean? Do 2 weeks of that, you're going to feel really different. And just like these sorts of things are powerful ways to just start doing very small things, but also starting to create some internal reflection that ultimately will lead you to where you need to go. Because no one can really tell you what to do. You got to figure that out for yourself. But there are certain things that you can help to foster that communication within yourself and start figuring it out. And it's really just about paying attention and asking yourself those questions. What do I really want to do? If money didn't mean anything, if I had no fears, if I had no limitations, what do I really want to do? Like actually, those sorts of things.
Yeah. I mean, voting with your dollar, making all the decisions that we make every day. I mean, it's so important. People have a tendency, I think, sometimes to think, well, I'm just one person, what does it matter? Or, not really giving thought to the decisions they make. But if you really stop and think, you realize that, you do have a choice in the way this whole thing goes. With every little second that happens and every day, there's a choice to be made. And if you start making the right choices, eventually they'll add up. And that's a powerful thing. And so, this whole collective evolution, really, Joe, I mean, you're talking about, it all begins with the individual. I mean, every individual has to make a choice in order to, to really be guided by their inner fulfillment and their soul, and move into that heart space and be who they want to be, and then we can have a better collective that way, right?
Absolutely, that's what it's all about. It's one affects the all, because we're all connected, right?
Excellent. So yeah, we're just about heading up on an hour. I can't believe it's been an hour. I got to say, I wasn't sure what to expect, and I know your work and I know stuff, but this has been a great conversation. I mean, I could go for another 25 hours or so just talking about this stuff. I feel like I say that with every guest that I have, and people are going to message me and say, you say that all the time. But it's true. It's just when you start getting into a conversation, just keep flowing and flowing. But yeah, anyway, so I guess before we wrap, we covered a lot of ground. We talked about a lot of things. Is there any kind of like main mission or main thing that you want to make sure that you get out to my listeners?
I just, like I think a lot of what I said, a lot of what I shared is very near and dear in terms of just like the message of, I think there's no need to fear our future. There's no need to not have hope. There's no need to feel like, everything's completely screwed and the cabal and the elite are going to kill everybody, because it just check within yourself. Do you really, truly, honestly feel deep within yourself that is where we're headed, right? So once you remove all the fears, all the programming, all this stuff, is that really where we're headed? When you look at the amount that's changing, the amount of awakening that's happening, the momentum that's behind it, I believe there's a lot of an overwhelming amount of hope in a sense, or just knowing that, we're going where we need to go. And it's just a matter of us getting on board and really focusing on ourselves and doing what we can and changing within and helping to create a more awakened consciousness overall on the planet by doing our part and really just getting in alignment with your soul purpose, whatever that looks like. And to be clear, that doesn't mean your soul purpose has got to be, I'm helping change the world, like in a sense of like, I'm planting trees, or I'm writing articles, or I'm doing whatever that look. But even if you really, really, really wanted to help people get in better shape, and you really wanted to just teach them about diet and exercise and stuff like that, and you loved that, you being in the space of doing and expressing that and loving that is more powerful than you not liking writing about how the elite is doing what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? It's more powerful to do what you love, like truly, and express and upload that energy to the collective, no matter what that looks like. But it's got to be a genuine love. It's got to be something that you truly care about. And to know the difference of that is a journey, but it's something I think we all inherently know. When you feel really good about something versus when like it's a temporary gratification mode, like your team wins, you're watching baseball or basketball, whatever it is, and your team wins and you feel good for like 10 minutes. I mean, that's kind of just like a fickle form of loving it. But when there's a true loving meaning, like you feel like, wow, I totally belong here, this is amazing, that's the kind of love we're looking for.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And that's such a powerful thing. And I think a lot of times, sometimes people think like, oh, this is just such a daunting task. I mean, look at all this terrible stuff, because we're just bombarded with all this fear and all this bullshit, in the mainstream. But like you said, cutting that stuff out and you feel better, you change, there's a different energy that you start to have, when you're no longer consuming that stuff. I like to equate it to like, it's like eating fast food every day or something, with this kind of news media and all that bullshit that we experience. But I think that this is a very powerful closing statement by you, and what we're seeing is more and more people waking up, more and more people shifting into a higher state of consciousness, more people wanting to love, wanting to share and to care, and eventually we'll see all of these things that have been created by our ancestors actually improve and change and shift. And we might throw on, instead of throwing on CNN one day, we might throw on CE one day, and it'll be like, oh cool, let's see what's on Collective Evolution on channel 44 or something like that. So that's the kind of shift that I think is possible when everybody starts kind of really opening up and moving to that direction. So that's a beautiful thing, man, and I really enjoyed this conversation. Just please go and tell everyone where they can find you, your films, anything else you're doing, if you're on social media, and the website, of course.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, we're on Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. I mean, if you just search Collective Evolution on any of those platforms, I think Snapchat's the only one that's not searchable. I think it's Collective underscore evolution. I could be, no, I think that's Instagram. I honestly don't remember our Snapchat because I really don't use Snapchat. So I feel like a terrible founder right now saying that, but it's the truth of it.
It's all right. We can edit this part out.
But yeah, Instagram, collective underscore evolution, and then Facebook. It's easy to just search us there and you'll find it. But it's just, I think it's facebook.com/collective evolution page. And yeah, our website's www.collective-evolution.com. Likewise, you could just type in collective evolution in Google and you'll be there. But the films and stuff like that we're currently in the mode of sort of re-releasing them. So if you kind of just catch up with our social media or join a mailing list or something like that, you'll definitely know when the film gets re-released. But it's a free screening model. So you just pop in your email, you get to watch the film. It's not we're not charging people for it or anything like that. So it'll totally be available. But it's going to take a couple weeks just to get that out there. But join us on any of those platforms and you'll know what's going on.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Joe. Thanks for taking the time and being on today. Appreciate it.
Cool, Mike. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It was a real good talk. Enjoyed it. Always love the opportunity to connect with different people. So it's been great.
Awesome. Thanks, man.